Hello and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today with Quest, which is titled How to Tackle Microsoft Challenges in a Hybrid World. My name is Danielle Chapman. I work in the marketing team at Bytes. And today I'm joined by Ewan Millington, who is a solutions consultant at Quest, and Adam Roach, who is a channel manager. I'm also joined by Matt Compton, who is the head of data management at Bytes. He'll be available in the end for the Q&A session. So on the agenda today, we've got an introduction to Quest, an overview of Quest on Demand. So that covers Office 365 and Teams migrations, Office 365 license and group management, Active Directory auditing and recovery, hybrid Active Directory, resilience and business continuity. So with that, I'm just going to pass over to Adam and Ewan.
Thank you, Danielle. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join this morning. So my name is Adam Roach, and I am one of the channel account managers at Quest, aligned to our platinum partner of Quest, Bytes. We did decide to keep this a short, punchy webinar of only 40 minutes. Because of that, we decided to remove the demonstration of the on-demand tool itself, but instead providing a click-through of each of the sections we're going to talk about today. As Danielle mentioned, there's a Q&A session at the end, which I'll be part of, but also following that, there is a short survey at which one of the questions asks if you would like to do a follow-up on anything specific around the on-demand tool itself, then I would be responsible for helping get that up and arranged to take you through the tool in more detail. So with that, I will hand over to my colleague, Ewan Millington.
Excellent, thanks, Adam. Okay, let me just share my presentation. Okay, just to check, can you see that okay? Adam?
Yep, that's all good.
Yep. Okay, excellent.
Perfect,
okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, so what I was going to go through today, so initial slides to sort of talk about technical challenges that people are having with moving to the cloud, moving to hybrid environments, and then talk about some of the ways using Quest on Demand, what it is, different ways that we can help solve some of those problems, as well as discussing more detail around some specific use cases. So if we look at the technical challenges that are arising today that we see customers talking to us a lot when they start moving to the cloud, security is huge, right? You know, people have spent a lot of money and time making their on-premise environment secure, and then they've kind of, you know, got another surface area of attack essentially once they start moving up to hybrid and cloud and 365 and Azure AD, and this is one of the big challenges for them. Like in a similar way, disaster recovery, if you can't get back to a good state, then you're going to be in trouble quite quickly. And there's disaster recovery on-prem, but also what are you doing in the cloud? It might be the content, it might be the identities around Azure AD and things like that you need to be recovering. Scalability, I mean, things are growing rapidly. Loss of control can happen quite quickly. You know, the number of customers I speak to, again, we talk traditionally about on-premise environments and the growth of, say, organic growth of groups, for example. What's going to happen in 365 and Azure AD if you don't manage it well? You're going to end up in a similar mess, and people are very concerned about that. The interfaces for 365 Azure AD again are varied. They can all look quite different. There's lots of different portals. Some things you can't do through 365 portals. You have to do that with PowerShell scripting. And there's quite a lot of things that you need to do with PowerShell scripting if you want to manage things well. And you need expertise for that. You need people trained up on it, and you need people available at all times really to allow you to do changes and configuration updates. So PowerShell experience is a big one. Being able to balance control of the environment. So securing it's one thing, but if you secure it so much that no one can use it, it isn't really going to work. So it's getting that balance right between what people can do easily and what you need to add a little bit more security on top of. And then the consistency. So, you know, you've got AD, you've got Azure AD, you've got content, you might have SharePoint, you might have mail in the cloud, on-premise. How can you maintain a consistency of technology and policies and processes across those two environments? So they're the 6 key things that we see customers seeing as a lot of pain points with this kind of setup. And common approaches to get around this or to move to the cloud. So charge ahead. I mean, with CV19 at the moment, that's a massive one that's going on. People are just having to put things up into the cloud, but that can have, you know, its own problems. Not planning properly for implementations, deployments, and configurations can cause issues. Putting more hours. So when you hit those stumbling blocks, what do people often do? It's just throw more resource at it. which isn't always the best way to go. Again, that can happen if you're charging ahead with it without thinking too much. Talked about PowerShell, so using native tools to do a lot of the work in 365 and Azure AD and managing those hybrid environments, that can quickly get pretty complex. And the final one, people assume Microsoft has it all covered. I mean, they do. When you think about from a platform perspective, they're going to keep those platforms up and available, and they've got lots of SLAs in regard to that. But think more about the content and the configuration and what's within Microsoft platforms and who's protecting that. Maybe the full story doesn't come from Microsoft. And the risk with these approaches, so charging ahead, you're going to hit all sorts of unknown hurdles and potentially compromise security. If you put a load of stuff up into the cloud without actually thinking about who's got access to it, or what might a user do that I wasn't really expecting them to do, that has shared a document externally, that kind of stuff is where you can end up in trouble if you charge ahead. Putting more hours in, the teams, there's not many IT teams that aren't absolutely maxed out at the moment from people I talk to. It seems really busy. There's always a lack of time, there's always a lack of resources, so you can't always throw more hours at it. PowerShell tools, yeah, they're native, but they can get pretty complicated very soon. So you don't have to pay for them, but you normally have to pay a lot for the resources that can manipulate them properly. And that's a constant ongoing battle. You have to constantly change scripts, update them, get people supporting them. It's not always the best answer. And if you assume Microsoft have got it covered, you could have those unexpected delays and additional work of the things that have gone wrong that you assume they would look after, but haven't. So with that in mind, I'm going to move through into Quest solutions in these areas to try and give you an idea of where we can help. And essentially, what the majority of this presentation is about today is the on-demand platform. On-demand is the brand name for Quest's SaaS implementation. And this is how it looks conceptually. So 5 microservices, which I'm going to talk about individually today: tenant-to-tenant migration, Azure Active Directory recovery, 365 license management, Azure AD and on-premise group management, and auditing from a hybrid perspective. And then we talk about around the outside there in the orange, the different platforms that kind of fall into these different microservices. So this is the on-demand platform. It's been around probably about 3 years now. It's very mature. It's got delegation models. It's got the recently ISO 27001 certification, so information security certification, because ultimately, we are looking after your data, or it's traveling through our platform. So we need to show that we are regulated and up to standard and all this sort of stuff, which we absolutely are. So as Adam said, we're going to go through a few screenshots of each of the areas just to give a flavor of what we're talking about here, because I think it can sometimes bring it to life. But hopefully what you'll see from this is consistency across the different microservices. It all looks very similar. So as you'd expect from SaaS platforms, you're not spending hours reading the technical documentation and user guide. You can get straight in and do what you want to pretty quickly. This is the dashboard view, so it gives a high-level view across all of the kind of microservices like the migration, recovery, audit. And then on the left-hand side, you can see that panel stays consistently there, lets you jump into the different microservices that you want, as well as having things like access control around RBAC of who can do what in those different platforms. So high level wide Quest on demand, I mean, fast and easy to set up. We're talking about SaaS here, so there's no installation, no upgrades, no license keys, no complex configuration. You just get a login and an entitlement, and off you go. Secure and reliable, plenty of ISO standards there. Like I say, it's been around for quite a while now, so pretty solid platform. And the really nice thing with SaaS is rapid innovation. So the speed Microsoft are introducing new features into Office 365 and Azure AD is pretty rapid, right? So on-premise solutions can't really keep up with that pace. Because we're SaaS, we go on pretty much 2-week sprint cycles with a lot of our stuff. So as soon as Microsoft start releasing new features, we can start doing things with them, whether it's migrating them, auditing them, backing them up, that kind of thing. So if I go into the first of the microservices, on-demand migration, it's not the kind of tool you're going to need every day, right? But there's tons of migrations happening tenant to tenant in the world. It might be mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, even name changes for tenants can't really be done natively. So you have to move between tenants, and this is endless conversation I'm having with customers. So what do? It's around taking a source tenant, taking the content across to the target tenant, and that's things like Azure AD, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive for Business, Exchange mailboxes, the kind of core workload that you would expect your users to be using with Microsoft. And what does it do? So conceptually, this diagram is designed to sort of give an overview of what on-demand migration can do. So you basically register your source and target tenants into it. You'd then be able to do discovery of the tenants, and that'll show you things like, Azure AD users and groups and the mailboxes and the size of them and OneDrive information. You can then migrate or those Azure AD users and groups, or even match them if they exist there in target. And that then gives you the one-to-one mapping, which allows you to migrate things like Exchange and OneDrive, which are user specific, into the target environment. And we take the content, but we also take things like the permissions and allow you to filter it on date or size of file or particular folders you don't want to take across, the kind of stuff you'd expect to allow you to be flexible in this migration. We can also take SharePoint content across, again, with all permissions and structure in place, and Teams across. So, the channels, the group 365 groups behind them, and the members and the settings and the permissions, as well as the conversations and the files associated with it. So a lot of stuff there, just pulling it across from source to target. And we can do that again and again, right? We don't have to do a one-off, we can do multiple copies. From a coexistence perspective, mail can get complex, so we allow the ability to do calendar sharing between tenants. We put email forwarding in place, so essentially we're copying mailboxes, not moving them. So you'll have two for a user at any point in time, but only one of them's live, so we'll forward from the dormant mailbox to the target one, so the live user always gets the mail. And we can also do domain name sharing, so the idea of you can only register one domain per tenant at a time, but you might have users in source tenant and target at the same time wanting to send out as the same email suffix. So we can do that with address rewriting from the coexistence perspective. Then as we move around to the left-hand side of the circle, at the bottom, you can see the kind of stuff that you'd expect from migration solutions, project management to give you dashboard monitoring. We can split up the migration jobs into collections. We can schedule when they're going to run, all that sort of stuff. And then for some extra things as well, we can update Outlook profiles. So they point to the target mailbox rather than the source mailbox after you switch the user over. And we can also process things like SharePoint and enterprise application assignments in source, so that users in target can still access SharePoint and those application assignments using a guest account to push through from target into that source environment. Again, high-level views from screenshots of what we can do here. You can have multiple projects, so you can have multiple source and target tenants, or one tenant to many tenants if you're splitting out to lots of different locations. You can see that each line there, each bar is kind of a source and target, and within it you can see the workloads that we're migrating, whether it's accounts, mail, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. If you then dig into one of those projects, you'll be able to see the dashboard, giving you a high-level view of how the migration is taking place. And then across the top there, next to dashboard, you'll see accounts, mailboxes, and OneDrive. That's essentially where you say, I want to migrate from here to here, and these are the settings that I want to complete. And then the tasks and events is every time you do something in the on-demand migrator, a task is created, and that task is made up of multiple events. So that's how you see exactly what's going on and the status of your migrations within the dashboard. Just one last thing. So, this is all about on-demand, really, this presentation, but in my experience, tenant to tenant doesn't normally only happen on its own. There's normally an Active Directory behind it. So just to let you know, Quest do a whole range of other things. So that AD to AD migration, which again integrates with on-demand, so you can drive it from the on-demand portal. It might be, file services going up to Teams or OneDrive or SharePoint. We can take that. PSTs, files, discover those and send them to Exchange Online. Email archives, send those to Exchange Online archive mailboxes. All that sort of stuff we can do as well. It's all in the kit bag. So yeah, worth considering, because when you're doing a tenant-to-tenant migration, there's normally some extra stuff that needs to go as well. Okay, so that was around migration. The next thing I wanted to talk about was on-demand recovery. So this is the concept of Azure Active Directory backup and recovery. So that will take everything in Azure AD, as well as some Office 365 concepts, into a backup. We store it inside our tenant. So all you need to worry about is just saying, do a backup on a regular cycle, and then recover what you want when you need to. And when we look at hybrid clouds, hybrid AD essentially, it adds additional risk. You've got additional and growing reliance on Azure AD. You might have application assignments, you might have conditional access policies, multi-factor auth. There's a ton of stuff that's only in Azure AD. And there's also more cloud-only objects than you think. So Office 365 groups, business-to-business group users, business-to-consumer users, and there's also even the ones that are synced from on-premise. There's all sorts of strange behaviors you need to be aware of that can affect the recovery of a user or a group if it disappears or is modified in Azure AD. Because on-prem recovery, it won't cover cloud at all. So yeah, some of the things to think about there. What you basically get in Azure AD as recovery, the closest thing to recovery is a recycle bin. Like you've always had in on-premise Active Directory, I think the Azure AD recycle bin is reasonably light at the moment, to be fair. It only keeps deleted objects for 30 days. So once an object's been deleted, 30 days has passed, there's no way to recover it. There's no reporting on what you need to restore, so it doesn't give you any idea of what's actually changed. So if someone comes to you and says, I can no longer access this, what's happened? There's no real way to tell. You just have to try and figure it out and then try and pull back what you can from the recycle bin. You can't restore at an attribute level. It's all object level, if at all. Some objects can't be recovered at all. So Azure AD only groups, group memberships, anything that's hard deleted. So even if it's not been 30 days, if somebody went in and deleted something, soft deleted, and then did a hard delete after, it's completely gone anyway. So if someone got in there maliciously, there's a fair chance that the recycle bin isn't really going to be able to help you. Restoring in bulk is not very straightforward recycle bin without using PowerShell, and you're limited to one tenant, as you would expect. The tenant boundary defines what Azure AD recycle bin can protect, but with on-demand migration. And in fact, all of our on-demand platforms, it's multi-tenant essentially, so you can manage multiple tenants from one interface. And again, a conceptual view of this, what do we kind of protect here? So we've got the users and all the stuff associated with users. So if we go around the right-hand side there, 365 mailboxes, we can reconnect those to users if they're still there in the 90-day dormant period after deleting a user and hard deleting them. Cloud-only attributes, so there's license settings, multi-factor auth settings, that kind of stuff can't be pulled from on-prem. Azure enterprise applications, so the idea of saying I can authenticate against this SaaS platform using my Azure AD credentials, all of that wrapped up together can get misconfigured, deleted, whatever, we can recover that. As well as the conditional access policies, the idea of saying, if you're connecting from this location, then you are going to have to do multi-factor auth, but this location, I'm going to let you through, and this location, no way are you connecting to my tenant. So those conditional access policies, again, we can back those up and recover those. As well as cloud-only stuff like cloud-only users, business-to-business accounts, business-to-consumer accounts, Azure AD users that are only in Azure AD. So hard deleted recovery, we can do bulk recovery, so we can select multiple checkboxes to say what we want to put back, and also we can show you the differences. So the idea is if a user something's been changed, we can unpack a backup, compare that to live, and show you the differences for you to put back. Other things around group memberships, 365 groups, Azure AD security groups, all the stuff you'd expect really, we can back up, protect, show you the differences, and put back into live what you require. And again, it's very rare we're talking to customers that purely have an Azure AD. They often have, they always have an on-premise Active Directory. And what we can do, we have another solution which has been around for a long time called Recovery Manager for AD, and that allows us to back up and recover Active Directory on-premise, which means we can connect these two together, and driven from the SaaS interface in on-demand, we can recover an on-premise AD user, we can trigger an Azure AD Connect, and then we can put back the Azure AD specific aspects of that identity. As well as that, the Recovery Manager on-prem has a wide range of other capabilities, including Disaster Recovery Edition, which allows you to recover, say, from ransomware attacks. So you've got no OS on your DC, you've got nothing. We can recover OS level to full forest AD recovery as well. So kind of the whole shooting match for Active Directory hybrid identity recovery. From a screenshots perspective, again, hopefully you're seeing the similarity as we move through the different SaaS platforms. Again, this is the dashboard for recovery, showing you the backups that have been taken, any errors, any tasks that have been happening, what's in those backups. And then as you move across, you can see, the backups tab will show you all the backups and when they were taken. Unpacked objects, the idea of an unpacked object is where we take a backup, we extract it, and we compare that with live, and that's how we build up things like the difference reports to show you what has changed and what you can recover. And this is how the difference report looks. So you can see like the object down the left hand side, some other aspects about it, but the key bit there is the difference field with the before and after values. So red crossed out is how it was in the backup, and green to the right hand side, or nothing if it's been removed, is how it is now in live. So if you don't like what you see there, maybe it's an application assignment that's changed, MFA state, group membership change, you can select each of those and just put that back as you see fit. And again, you've got the events and tasks, very similar to how I showed in the migration. Every activity is a task made up of multiple events, so you can dig into exactly what's going on in that activity. On-demand audit, I feel, ties pretty closely to the recovery. It helps give you even more visibility exactly what's going on in your environment and therefore what it is you might want to recover. From an audit perspective, what do we audit? So currently it's Azure Active Directory, changes, sign-ins, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, Exchange Online, and shortly we'll have Teams auditing as well. So comparing this with native auditing that's within 365, some of the benefits that you get with the on-demand audit is there's no consolidated view of cloud activity in native auditing. You have various portals around Azure AD and Office 365 that you have to jump around. They all look a bit different, so you can't get that single view of what's going on, which can be quite painful when you're trying to ascertain exactly what's been happening in the environment. Jumping around different views is not helpful. Difficult to configure auditing across both on-prem and cloud workloads. I'll talk about this a bit later, but we can do that essentially with hybrid reporting, pulling in Active Directory on-premise information as well to give you that complete view in one interface. Natively, it's very limited alerting and searching and reporting. What you can actually filter on is quite limited, what reports you can generate. It's difficult to interpret events. Again, the different workloads give different sort of formats of events, and they're pretty cryptic in how they're put together as well. So with on-demand audit, we can start extrapolating those and normalizing those for who, what, where, when information. So it's easy to see what's going on. And a big problem with native auditing is how long that data is stored for. So sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes it's 90 days. I believe with some licenses, you can get some audit data retained for a year, but that doesn't mean you can easily search it. You often, for more quantities of data or older data, you often have to dump that out to CSV file and manipulate it yourself manually. So where can on-demand audit help there? So we've got the search and view, all those changes on-prem and in the cloud from that single interface. Normalizing what it looks like, so the who, what, where, when is quite easy to see and filter on. We can delegate very granular access about who can see what, different workloads and things like that. And we can keep audit data for as long as you want. So at the moment, I think we have SKUs for 3, 7, and 10 years where we can store the data. Again, we pull this as audit data into our platform. So once it's removed from 365 or gets purged or whatever, we still have it. We can still let you access it and run reports and get alerts and all that sort of stuff. Just to show you the interface again, this one is dashboard views. So we can see here, for example, sign-ins. We can see what applications we're signing in, and we've got a nice sort of geo kind of locator to show you where the hotspots of sign-ins were, which you can interactively dig into, zoom in and out, to see what's going on. We also have the ability to visualize all searches that have taken place. So this one's a kind of everything that's been happening. So show me, all activity, and then you can click on them. For example, if I'm only interested in OneDrive, it will highlight the OneDrive and it'll show you the users that are doing most of the OneDrive activity and what they are doing. But that's kind of high level visualization heat maps. You can then dig into searches. Searches are where you can specify filters to say this time period, this target, this origin IP address, and this user, for example. I want to know what they were doing kind of thing. And you build those filters up, and then on the right hand side you can see individual items, how we display them, and at the top there, that's the normalization I'm talking about there. When was it, who did it, what was the target, what was the source, was it successful? And also, it's not in this particular deck, but we've also started putting before and after values, which can be quite helpful too. But then down below all that, you can see all of the native logging, audit log that's there if you need it. But again, it's laid out quite nicely, so it's a bit more easy to flick through. And also you can select any point. Actually, this particular value, I want to filter on that. So I could say origin IP address, add that as a filter, and then I'm only going to see all activity from that particular IP address. So allowing you to quickly manipulate this data so you can see exactly what you want when you want. And as I talked about before, again, like the recovery, we have a hybrid story here. So we have on-premise auditing solutions that have been around for a long time. We can push at the moment Active Directory changes up into Quest on-demand audit, but we will be adding other workloads as well soon. But that adds so much value contextually to allow you to say, well, I can see this change happened on-prem. I can see this sign-in happened in Azure AD. I can see that group that got changed on-prem and synchronized up now gave them access to SharePoint Online, and I can see now that they deleted all of this, and that's how they did work through all of that attack essentially. So it gives you a lot of view as to what's been going on. So the last two, so we've got license management. So this is more around giving you a view of licenses assigned or unassigned or not being used in an Office 365 environment. So very much focused on 365 tenants. It's not like a broader asset management solution. The idea is to give the tenant administrator a better handle of what's going on within their tenant from a license perspective. So again, natively, where are the gaps here? So there's no single dashboard view across single or multiple tenants for exactly how your licenses are being used. And that means no method to sort of gain an insight into the trends and estimated costs or even losses that might be going through your organization due to licenses that aren't being utilized or just licenses assigned to users that are disabled, for example. We've got no ability to display that, so that doesn't give us a way to understand where are we wasting money essentially in an environment. It's all about giving graphical view of and manipulatory to a view that can be manipulated to give you an idea of who's using what. So with our license management, you can determine 365 licenses and Azure AD licenses are available, who they're assigned to. You can quickly see who the end users are, 365 services that have been provisioned, and you can filter by departments and things like that. You can customize rates to your organization to reveal real costs. So obviously an E3 license will cost X amount and an E5 license X amount. Everybody probably pays a slightly different amount. You can put that into the tool and allow you to say, okay, this is how much you're paying for all your licenses. Based on the fact these licenses are unutilized or unassigned, this is how much you're wasting every year, essentially. And then you can consider, new licensing plans. So just wanted to include this slide again. It's a few more screenshots because there's a few more things going on of how the license management looks, but hopefully gives you an idea, high level trends you can get around license availability in active users of certain products. It can be useful for showing adoption, right? This particular, we've invested all this money in E5 licenses, but E5 aspects of the license aren't being used. Maybe we should roll this back to E3. So yeah, discover that total loss of licenses a year and the breakdown and the reporting chargeback of licenses as well. So the ability, if you need to on a departmental level, for example, to say this is how much your users in your department are costing the company, therefore chargeback internal costs can be transferred. And that one's quite an interesting one. I speak to a lot of customers that say they buy their 365 licenses as a company globally, but they just then get picked off and used up by the various departments and regions, and there's no real way to track it very easily in order to do chargeback. This will give that kind of capability. And the final microservice in the on-demand platform is group management. The idea behind group management, it's always been a real pain historically, right? Lots of customers with on-premise Active Directory have tens of thousands of groups. No one's really sure what they're doing. It's got in a mess really quickly, and customers are really keen not to have that same problem in Azure AD. And with Teams coming along and 365 groups being behind all of that, that can quickly get out of control. So it's a group management tool. It's Azure AD and Office 365 groups, as well as on-premise Active Directory. So again, we're trying to give that hybrid view of everything. So visibility of managed groups in a single console. Like I say, that's from all the different areas that in the cloud and on-prem. And it helps to keep that order. So rules for group creation, I can control naming conventions. You know, you have to have this text in a name, in a group name. It has to be, you pick a location, geo, we can pre-populate some drop-down fields and things like that. Attestation, you know, say that the owner of the group has to attest every 30 days, for example, that the membership is correct. And expiration as well. So, you know, expiring groups, memberships, or expiring the groups themselves, all helps to keep a tighter control over your management of the groups. We can offload the activity to self-service UI, so end users can say, well, I know I'm in the finance team, I need to have, someone's told me I need access to the finance distribution list. I can quickly search for that, request access. That can go through an approval workflow, so I'm not just blindly adding myself to all sorts of distribution lists and security groups and 365 groups, and then it gets approved by the owner or whoever you decreed to do the approval and gets pushed through. Likewise, we can delegate down the power away from some of the IT teams who can get swamped by delegating access to certain things. So, you know, you could say, well, the owner of this group is not the IT team, it's actually a manager of everybody who needs access to that data, for example. And again, they can do the approval workflow and the attestation around that to continue to validate that group membership to make sure the right people have the right access. From a screenshot perspective, again, pretty similar sort of stuff. Hopefully you'll see in the layout, we have the dashboard and then you can drill down into the different bits. Dashboard showing you things like the groups that are available, approval tasks for that particular user, and self-service requests for that particular user. I have requested access to this group and show you the progress of that, for example. I wanted just to include this as well, because this is more what the administrator of the tool would see rather than the end user. And the idea here is this is setting up policies to control how the groups behave. So you'd have security policy there at the top where I've put UNSEC, and that's where you're putting expiration of groups and attestation requirements. You know, every 30, 60, 90 days, it needs to be attested by the owner. You've then got the group naming rules. So you'll have a prefix, for example, a country code and a description. You can hard code this text. You can get drop downs, or you can pull values from attributes of the user doing the creation or modification. We also have creation templates around, you know, depending what type of group location and group type it is, we can have different templates enforced. And then that group category at the bottom is kind of pulling all this together. So naming rules, templates, and security levels pushed together and enforced onto groups when you are creating them, essentially. And this is going to give you, like I say, on-prem AD as well as Azure AD and 365, one interface to control all of that group management and hopefully stop sprawl and mess getting into the environment. So that was, whistle stop tour, but hopefully gave you a flavor of the 5 microservices currently in the on-demand platform. Like I say, I think it's really important we've got the ISO standard now, because we store data, or data travels through. It's important that we are transparent and regulated on how that is all done. And this is growing as well. You know, each of those 5 microservices, like I say, every couple of weeks we have a new sprint. So if Azure Active Directory releases a new feature, we will look at adding that to the recovery, for example, or if it needs to be migrated, we can add that into the tool, and we can do it much quicker than we can with on-premise solutions. And this is growing as well. So there's plenty of things, I don't think I'm allowed to share at the moment, but there's plenty of things in the pipeline of ideas of different capabilities that we'll be bringing out into this cloud platform as well as kind of blending them together and giving cloud specific benefits like recovery. Absolutely, we'll be talking, you know, to audit. So you got that richer picture of, I can see what changed and I can see exactly who made that change. Or maybe if it's a group management with recovery, I can see some changes I didn't like in group management. Rather than having to figure out what's happened, I could just recover that group. Or we could do, you know, the idea of, you know, cloud sourcing ideas. So often with auditing solutions, we get asked, well, what's the best practice for what should I be looking out for in an auditing platform to set reports up and alerts kind of thing. But obviously, when it's in our when we are in control of the platform, we'll be able to do things like say, well, we can see, it doesn't anonymously 20 customers set up this report in the last week, sorry. This might be of interest to you, and sort of push that towards you. So there's lots of ideas and lots of benefits we get from this on-demand platform, and they'll be filtering in over the coming months and years as this whole platform continues to grow out. And that's everything I was going to cover off in this presentation. I think we're going to open up for some Q&A, so happy to answer any of those questions and anything that comes up.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ewan, and thank you, Adam, as well. So we're just going to kick off some questions. Just to remind you, you can submit these in the questions box, which is should be at the right-hand side of your screen. So if you submit those, I can read them out. So I'm just going to kick off with this one question. Can you explain how the domain name sharing part of on-demand migration works?
Yeah, okay, so that's around for migrating tenant to tenant. This is email specific. You can only register a domain name, so for example, @quest.com in one tenant at a time. So if you migrate some users over to a target tenant and you still want them to be sending as @quest.com, you can't do that natively. You have to use the address rewrite service, which we offer, which allows you to then sort of send out from the target tenant, and then the address is rewritten on the from field and then finally sent on to the source tenant and out from there. So it allows you to, sort of mimic the fact you're all in the quest.com tenant from an email address space, but actually you're in the middle of migration. Some users are in source, some users are in target.
Brilliant, thank you, Ewan. And how does the AD hybrid recovery work?
So that's the idea. So with our Recovery Manager for Active Directory on-premise solution, that has a webhook into the on-demand SaaS solution, basically a connectivity between the two. The on-premise solution does its regular backups of Active Directory, and the SaaS solution on-demand recovery does its regular backups of Azure AD. And because they're talking to each other, you can log on to the SaaS platform, on-demand recovery, and see hybrid changes. So it might be an on-premise change, and then recover the on-premise change from the SaaS interface, which essentially tells on-premise to recover the AD or group, the user or group, synchronize it with Azure AD Connect, and then on-demand recovery will put back the Azure AD specific items, so that's license settings or membership in a conditional access group or entitlement for an enterprise application assignment, all those kind of things. So you don't really need to worry about recovering on-prem, syncing, and the Azure AD, it kind of does that for you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I'll kind of just leave it a couple of seconds to see if anyone else has any more questions, but I just wanted to remind you all, if you could please fill out the survey at the end. As mentioned, you can request a demo or a 30-day free trial using this as well. If you do think of any questions after that, please do email us at tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. So I don't think we've had any more questions come through, but thank you very much, Adam and Ewan, for presenting today. That was really helpful. I hope everyone's found this webinar session valuable today. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.